Welcome to another episode of the Distributed Data Show, brought to you by DataStax Academy, where we bring you the latest news and interview technical experts to help you succeed at building large-scale distributed systems. Welcome, everyone. I'm Patrick McFadin. I'm live in the studio today. It's just me and Jeff. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. So we don't have any remote people today. It's just you and me. An intimate session, really. We're going to learn a little bit about DataStax Enterprise, but from a different perspective. You've built systems with Apache Cassandra. You wrote a book about Apache Cassandra. I like to say you wrote the book. That was you, right?
That happened.
Yeah, that happened. But then along the way, you got to know DataStax Enterprise. So this is a good point of view, like a diff or a delta or between Apache Cassandra and what's happening in DataStax Enterprise, which is obviously a lot more than just a part of the database, Cassandra database. There's a lot more going on there. So what was it like for you getting to know DataStax Enterprise?
Okay, well, it was very eye-opening for me as I got to learn the product and all of the capabilities that were there. I got really excited, in fact, and kind of you mentally go back to systems that you've designed and things that you've worked on, and I wish I would have known about this feature because I totally would have made use of this here, and et cetera, et cetera. So what I did is I gathered up a bunch of those things, my excited discoveries that I made about DSE, and I put together an old school top 10 list.
Oh, like David Letterman style?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, he's not around anymore. You know that, right? It's getting pretty dated reference.
Is it though?
Well, yeah, but it's not. I mean, top 10 lists are still pretty cool. I mean, BuzzFeed does it now, right?
It's a classic thing.
Yeah, no, and BuzzFeed does lists all the time. Like top 5 things to know what type of bread you eat means how lonely you are or something like that. So
exactly.
We'll be fine.
Exactly. So this is a little bit better than the top 10 numbers from 1 to 10. Maybe just a slightly more substance, a little bit less absurdity.
Right.
Let's roll with it, okay?
That sounds good.
Okay, so number 10, certified Apache Cassandra releases for bug fixes with confidence. So
you got a little story about that.
Oh man, there's a story here. Yeah, I mean, one of the things about when you're working with an open source project is one of the great things is obviously you see the source, you patch it yourself when you need to, and you put a pull request in to try to get that into the official release. So I've seen teams do this where there was an officially supported version by the ops team, and then one of the dev teams found a bug in Cassandra and rolled their own version, and then there was this inertia, like they never wanted to get off their version that one dev team supported, or at least there was a hesitancy there because, well, we know this works.
Right.
And the ops team was like, well, we don't want to support that anymore because you rolled your own. And then there's this tension. And
well, it's that conservative nature of enterprise development places, any big shops where, hey, we're going to be doing this times 1,000, times 10,000. We need to make sure that it's exactly the same thing all the time. It's consistent. So having that certification, at least, and knowing that you have a process to get a bug fix instead of just building a one-off is really, I think that's a good thing for large companies.
Right. That gives you the stability and the comfort that you need, and knowing that's all been tested on maybe up to 1,000 node cluster like it is in our test environment.
Right.
Pretty awesome. All right. So next is number 9. Ongoing performance innovation. I'm privy to a lot of the stuff I hear about what our product team and engineering team are kind of up to behind the scenes. But I mean, there is a lot of performance innovation that goes on. We're not standing still. We're not doing fake benchmarks. We're benchmarking against ourselves, most of the time.
Mostly I'm against benchmarks, comparative benchmarks against product A versus product B. I think they're just kind of a good way to say exactly what you want to say. I'd rather have a benchmark that says this is exactly how it works under this particular condition. But you're right.
Yeah, and then we're doing apples to apples against our own product.
Exactly. And so we are, this is part of what DataStax is doing, is building the best version of Apache Cassandra we can build. And performance is a big deal. And let's face it, that's probably one of the top things that people will come to Apache Cassandra in the first place is they need more performance. Well, in DataStax Enterprise, our version of Cassandra has a lot of innovations, and there's a lot more to come. Some of these I can't really talk about right now. They're still in the forming stage, but things that have already shipped, for instance, are this increased performance on paging. So whenever you're running a Spark workload, and that is a big deal because when you're running bulk operations with Spark, that it takes a long time to do anyway because you're doing Spark. But if you have fast paging off of the disk with your Cassandra tables where it sits, that can make a big difference in a long running job. I think the other one, which is near and dear to my heart, is in increased speed on compaction.
Oh yeah.
That's in 5.1 right now. That's shipped. Great blog post on that in our engineering blog. I think Dewey High is going to be doing a tutorial on that soon. So it is like twice as fast as what you can get out of the Apache project. It's just our own version of how we do compaction.
Right, and that's not something that you're going to see on a specific read or write request, but that's background processing that is additional load on your nodes, right? And it adds up over time. So, we are doing all these little things behind the scenes that make everything faster and more performant, less resource utilization. We care. All right, so number 8, flexible deployment options for multi-data center and multi-workload. So one of the things that I think is really powerful about DSE is that we don't try to treat every possible deployment the same. Different systems are unique in their requirements in terms of the numbers of data centers that you have, where they're located, how far apart they are. Are you doing analytics? Are you running search options? Are you using graph? No two clusters are the same. And so
there's a whole lot more going on each one too. Yeah.
Right. So we have things like advanced replication that allows you to actually hook two separate clusters together that might have low bandwidth connectivity between them.
Yeah, that's actually one of probably the least known features of DataStax Enterprise is the advanced replication. It allows you to basically set up a star topography where you have a central hub and then remote clusters, entirely new clusters that replicate into a central hub, which has so many cool use cases, but that's just not something that's really easy to do or even you can do with regular Apache Cassandra out of the box. So DataStax Enterprise is adding that feature. This is pretty important to a lot of enterprise companies. They need this feature for things like oil field operations, remote sensors, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that, and then the multi-workload would be also in how we do DSE multi-instance, how we can run more than one instance on a single server.
Exactly. I was just learning about this. If you think about it, you may have some existing hardware resources. Let's say you're not running in the cloud. Hey, everyone's running in the cloud. No, we have data centers that are, on-prem data centers with perhaps some really large machines that we need to get the most usage out of. What if we can run multiple nodes on a single large machine? This is this is reality. So
yeah, Server Source Rex exists. I talk about Server Source. It's actually one of my presentations. So yeah, it's a big box. Like, what do you do with all that hardware? Utilize it.
Yes. So that was a theme that I just saw emerging in a lot of the features that we have in terms of, it's not a one-size-fits-all deployment. Number 7, advanced security features for your unique environment. So, I have made liberal use of the out-of-the-box default kind of authentication and authorization implementations that come with Apache Cassandra. They work great. They're extremely functional. But okay, now we're deploying Cassandra as part of an enterprise application. And guess what? In the real enterprise world, I have an existing LDAP server or Kerberos installation that's been set up. How do I integrate with that? Also, what if there's a mixture of those kind of in place? So
Active Directory, that sort of thing.
Yeah, hooking up to all of those. But I may have applications that also they need their own credentials, because applications are people too, or at least they are from a security perspective.
Well, I'm going to make a lot of security people that work in large enterprises really angry right now, but let's face it, security is like the least sexy thing you're talking about when you're deploying an application. It is really besides documentation, probably the last thing you do, and you probably aren't doing it very well most times because it is such an afterthought. But the problem, and this is what I think a lot of people run into, is when you forget it and you don't do it right, you get the CSO in your office, and you look forward to that just like you look forward to having the cops pull up to your house. You don't want that, right?
It's kind of that same sinking feeling in your stomach.
Yeah. Did you really deploy this with a password called 12345? Did you really do that? So, we do take this seriously, and we try to make it as easy as possible so you do it. Right. But there's also some cool little features that enable with the role-based row-level access. That is a great setup for a multi-tenant story on DataStax Enterprise.
This is, I feel like, very, very, very cool. Because I have been in conversations in the past about the hypothetical, okay, what if this app gets really popular and we need to turn it into a multi-tenant app? How would we do this? And the conversation always kind of ran to a screeching halt when we got to the data tier. Yeah. Like, how are we going to enforce this? Oh, man, I don't want to try to... Yeah, you think about what it's going to take to implement this ourselves. So now this is a capability that's built into DSE. I can use the same cluster and use this row-level access, controlling access to fields based on a predicate, one of the primary key columns, and then now I can control the access of who gets to see what rows.
Right.
This is so much better than having to roll your own. All right, number 6. Reducing your operational burden with Ops Center. Okay, so if you've seen the user interface for Ops Center, I love the visualization of the ring and how it kind of helps you to see. I'm a visual person. I love to see that organization with the cluster. That's not even really what this top 10 list item is really about for me. As much as I love the eye candy of the pretty pictures, this is a huge time and effort saver, and actually, honestly, keeps you from screwing up. Having worked with a team that invested a ton of effort in automating the repair process and scripting that and getting that all running just right, and honestly making several mistakes along the way, I don't know that repair is something that you want to try to manage yourself manually. Gosh, no. Or, even automate the scripting of that yourself. Really, I think, for example, repair service, other services that are built into Ops Center itself, like upgrade service, take all that kind of doing it wrong off the table.
Yeah, and the services I think those are one area, of course, because they're built by experts, people who've been running Cassandra clusters and DataStax Enterprise clusters for a long time, and they get some of the nuance of that. But even before you get to that point, Lifecycle Manager, LCM.
Yeah.
It's a deployment tool, which is really, let's face it, this is a hard topic. Distributed systems are hard, especially when you're doing ops. These are for my ops people, #OpsLife.
There you go.
Yeah, the ops people that have to deal with, hey, we're going to deploy a lot of servers. They need tools and help to make that work. And LCM is really helpful for the deployment, sure, because it allows you to get a consistent configuration deployed across multiple servers. And trust me, that is easy to screw up. Yeah, I've seen people hand edit 10 configuration files and get 10 different configuration files. Then beyond that is updating and keeping, if you have to update a setting, making sure that's consistent across your entire cluster. Again, hard one because you don't want to fire up an SSH terminal and go and hand edit all of those. If you're doing that, you're flirting with disaster.
Well, and a lot of people don't even allow that in their environments.
Yeah.
Right? SSH not allowed.
Yeah, no, it's a big no on that. Or worse, you have these change control meetings. I know those people out there, feel your pain. Change control meetings where somebody has to approve the change set. Well, this is a good way to make sure that those happen with an approved thing. So if you're in an environment where you have that, this is really going to help.
Awesome. So, for me, it's like taking all the best practices about maintaining a Cassandra cluster, and now it's available in this automated tool.
Right.
Number 5. Okay, fast text, geospatial, complex searches, what have you, with DSE Search. So, for me, getting closer and closer to my heart here, and things that I've been frustrated about and worried about over time, and had developers mad at me about when I told them they were using Cassandra. Just the ability to support additional search options. So I remember one application where we wanted to do a kind of like a geospatial location-based search, and if you think about it, what do you need to do? Do a bounding box. You basically need to do a range query on latitude and longitude, or some multi-attribute kind of query. Cassandra doesn't support that out of the box, and so I spent time. Should we do geo-hashing? Should we start trying to roll our own sort of solution out?
Yeah, don't do it yourself.
No.
Yeah, there's just too many geniuses out there that know how to do this that have figured it all out for you. I am a big fan of letting the geniuses work out the hard stuff. And this is one of those. And search, let's face it, is table stakes anymore for any application. You don't deploy an application without search in it. If some facet of search, and facet is actually a part of search. Funny pun.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you see that? But the search capabilities that are built into the data that you're storing inside a Cassandra table, also a graph database, and also, and this is the cool part, is inside of a Spark query when you're running analytics. All of those places that can utilize a fast index search for full text, that's pretty cool. And then I didn't even know this, but this is like 5.5 is inside our DSE file system. If you have a file in there, you can also index those files inside a DSAFS.
Nice.
And have a query language to do that. That's super flexible. It's going to make your application build life a lot easier.
All right, number 4, real-time and operational insight with DSE Analytics. Okay, so what am I getting at here? You may have had conversations, as I have in the past, about someone asking, a peer project or another team coming to you and saying, okay, well, we love all of the great services that you're building in your new system, and we need to be able to get that data out and extract that out so we can get it into our analytics environment so that we can run some reports and build that kind of stuff up. So, either we can go and write some code that hits a REST API and starts to go and pull a bunch of things out, or maybe we could just maybe as you're saving stuff, you could, put it on a queue, and we can just kind of monitor that event stream and do a little change data capture and
blah, blah, blah. Move data, move data, move data.
Moving data.
It's just a horrible, horrible thing, because in my experience, as soon as you start getting into the operation of moving data, then this is where trouble begins, because you're always going to lose data. Something's going to get dropped out. Bits get they fly into the wrong place.
Right.
It's very complicated to get parity and match up. The impedance matching between data sets is very difficult. Then that's the T part. That's why we have transform, is because the impedance matching between two different data stores is really difficult. I've been very vocal about this. I think ETL is a disaster. You don't do it if you can help it. And that's one of the reasons that running any kind of analytics workload inside DataStax Enterprise is advantageous, because you're working on data that's already stored in a Cassandra table locally, and it operates against that table locally. It isn't going out to have a load job that finds the data from some other data store, dumps it into a data warehouse, and good luck, it may not be there.
Right. But then again, we do have, we have this data in Cassandra that we want to run Spark jobs on.
Sure.
Yes, we can go to other data sources from other systems and pull those in as well. It's all Spark, right?
Mm-hmm,
so we can certainly do that in that DSE Analytics environment. Number 3, exploring new horizons with DSE Graph. So I've got to say that, in some of the past applications that I've designed and helped to build, the graph technology wasn't even on my radar.
It's just popping onto everyone's radar, I think.
So I think it's like, you're only beginning to see some of the use cases that are coming out. But I definitely, have had discussions about interfaces with recommender systems, and how are we going to pull this data out so that we can do real-time analytics, customer 360. We want to be able to do product recommendations based on our perspective of the customer that we have. I think it's phenomenal that this is an integration that we now have built in right on top of the core DataStax product.
Well, it adds another dimension to the way you look at data, and that's what's fascinating to me. Is I had not really put the time into thinking deeply about graph until I started seeing the use cases, which are much different than in a lot of cases. For instance, the classic is the bill of materials, is recursive queries where you're having to traverse lots of data and you have no idea of the boundary. And anyone who's ever written recursion code knows that that's super scary because you know what your bottom out case is. And if you're doing that on a database, that can be equally as scary. I didn't even know you could do recursive queries, but that's in CQL or SQL. And I don't know if I would even write one. But Graph makes that super easy. It makes it a lot easier. Plus the relationships of data. Where relational tables describe the relationships, Graph lets you find the relationships.
It embodies the relationship. And
right.
I think, there is a lot of talk in industry about digital transformation. That's like big buzzwords, customer 360, customer experience.
Yeah.
The technology that enables you to do those kinds of things is the technology that understands people and understands people and how they're related. And
yeah, and
that's
when you
a graph.
say that, and you say, hey, my data is related, it doesn't mean you're talking a relational database.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Number 2, letting your data tell its own story with DataStax Studio. So we've been talking a lot on the Distributed Data Show about Studio. If you are following us, subscribing, you'll see definitely a number of episodes where we are talking about Studio and giving demonstrations of it and so on. And evangelists are out there recording lots of content about DataStax Studio. There's a reason that we are so excited about this as a tool. So in development shops that I've worked in, I just anecdotally, you might expect to see developers that are working with Cassandra, doing lots of CQLSH and kinds of commands, and no, they're using Dev Center, which is kind of our previous tooling that was based on an Eclipse style environment, even to the point where I would see testers. So anybody who was touching Cassandra was running Dev Center. And I think the reason why is because of that visual aspect to it, the syntax highlighting, and especially the ability to see traces of queries and see where time was being lost.
Yeah.
So I feel like Studio takes that to the next level. It has all of those capabilities, but now we're talking, the autocomplete type features that are there, the ability to take that data. Yeah, I just ran a query. Whether it be a CQL query or a graph query, and I now have that data in a table, and that's great. I can look at it in JSON format. Some people like that. But I want to see a visual representation of it. I want to see it in a graph, a chart, pie charts.
That's how I see, well, no pun intended again, but that's how I see graph data, is in those dots with arrows connecting them all together, and that brings it to life a little more. It gives you I'm much more of a visual person, I guess, in that regard.
Right.
Typing out a gremlin command doesn't give me the feel for my connected data. And that's the truth. But notebooks are really, they're a hot topic right now. They've been around for a while, but you look at Jupyter is taking off and doing its own thing around Python and some of the data science. But a Studio fits that same mold where, hey, it just kind of acknowledges the fact that we have people that work with data somewhat transactionally, or they're working around it. They're exploring data.
That's right.
Before they write applications or as they're writing applications. It's just an important part of working with data now.
Yeah, I mean, that ability to sort of interact and save off little snippets. I would say that the other thing when I saw people using Dev Center is the companion application to Dev Center was Notepad.
Yeah.
Right. Where I have these little snippets of of partial queries and attributes, primary key columns that I've kind of saved off because I want to look at later. Now I save that in a notebook.
Yeah, well,
and it's all there. And I can write a markdown comment that describes what I'm seeing, and it's all self-documenting. It's all right there.
Well, I know SQL people out there have probably been using Toad forever So this is just what we expect to have, is a place where we can store all our cool queries, because we keep them to ourselves, right?
Right. All right. And can we have a drum roll for number 1? Help me out.
No. There, how's that?
Okay, number 1.
All right, number 1. That was horrible.
All right. So, well, we need to raise our game on that.
Yeah, we need sound effects.
Okay, number 1 is innovate instead of administrate or administer with DataStax Managed Cloud. I'm super excited about this capability, to the point where I'm kind of driving the product team crazy at times on the DataStax Managed Cloud. Like, can we talk about this yet?
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about it?
Well, it's out. It's around. It's funny because we were talking about Ops Center, as it makes ops life a lot easier. But DataStax Managed Cloud is acknowledgement that some people just don't even want to deal with it at all.
Right.
That, hey, I'm not interested in running this massive cluster of this super important data. I would rather you just do this for me, and that's where DataStax Managed Cloud comes in.
Right. So, I mean, is that what you want to be thinking about? I'm starting new project X. Okay, I'm in a big established company and I'm working on the awesome new corporate objective. Or I'm a startup and I, 3 guys and we're coding in my basement. In either case, do I really want to be spending all my time figuring out how to set up and administer my Cassandra cluster? Or do I want to be writing business logic and cool web UIs and mobile apps that sit on top of all that? I think I know where I would be wanting to spend my time.
It's the natural, I think it's a natural evolution of infrastructure, where the problem that we're solving for, whatever you're writing your application for, the problem you're solving for, that's the goal, that's the mission. The methods that you get there need to be cost effective, reproducible, and fairly error free. So we've seen that with cloud adoption, where people are like, I don't want to run my own data center. I don't want to think about power and fuel contracts and all that stuff. I'll let someone else deal with that. We are, as a industry, moving towards that, because we're trying to solve the problem of, how do I get people to use my application or interact with my products or whatever.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's it. That is the top 10.
That was very it was very David Letterman-esque. It was not BuzzFeedy, I thought.
Okay, that's good. That's what we were going for.
Yeah, it was really good. Thank you. All right, Jeff. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Distributed Data Show. A very small, intimate version, studio version. But thanks again for joining us. Thank you for joining us again for the Distributed Data Show. We love your feedback, so go to the Distributed Data Show page on DataStax Academy and tell us what you think. You can also find us on the DataStax Academy YouTube channel, or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get great podcasts. While you're there, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.